Since it's almost 5 minutes after, I suppose, I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Savannah Dowell. I'm a sophomore studying women's gender and sexuality studies here at the University of Louisville. And today I'm going to talk about ecofeminism, ecosocialism, their contributions to the climate movement, some of their shortfalls maybe. And yeah, it's going to be fun. Fair warning that I'll probably end up spending way more time on eco-socialism than ecofeminism, and that's because I've been researching environmental Marxist thought all semester for my modern political thought class, so it's really heavy on my mind right now. Um, but we're going to discuss the origins and ideas of ecofeminism and to what extent we should apply it to today's climate movement. So, first, I think it's essential to define these terms, feminism and patriarchy, because these are going to be super essential to build our understandings of ecofeminism. So I like to define feminism. There are so many definitions out there, and we could build beautiful, amazing, expansive definitions. But for the sake of keeping things short, I like to define feminism as a broad movement that strives for political, social, and economic equality for all genders. And feminist thought holds that it is the patriarchy that oppresses women and femmes around the globe. And the patriarchy is this social system that refers to the male domination in our political, social, and economic spheres. Patriarchy has been carefully crafted and upheld throughout history, and it is the patriarchy that explains this power imbalance between genders. So we know very well now that climate change does indeed disproportionately impact women. And this article from the United Nations Women makes that really super clear. So, what the United Nations Women says is that climate change is a threat multiplier, that it escalates social, political, and economic tensions in fragile and conflict affected settings. And it also says that women and girls' health is endangered by climate change and limit and disasters by limiting access to services and healthcare, as well as increasing risks related to maternal and child health. So we know that the extreme heat increases sorry, the extreme heat increases incidences of stillbirth. Climate change is spreading diseases like malaria, Zika virus, etc., and those worsen maternal and neonatal outcomes. So it's very clear to us now that climate change is an issue that disproportionately impacts women and femmes around the globe, and especially those in the global south. And so the solution is to bring women and femmes to the forefront of the climate movement and really include them in our policy decisions. So this other article from the United Nations argues that having women and femmes and at the forefront and considering the gendered implications of our climate policy decisions can really help us combat climate change in a way that is both meaningful and just. So hello, everyone who joined us just a second ago. Welcome in, Dr. Harville. We're talking about ecofeminism right now. So we just finished discussing how climate change disproportionately impacts women and femmes around the globe. And so we're going to talk about the roots of the ecofeminist movement and how it kind of arose from this idea of gender inequality and climate change and ecological disasters. So ecofeminism, we get it in the 70s, and it seeks to explore this connection between gender inequality and the domination and exploitation of nature. And also, I want to issue a fair warning that the language of ecofeminist thought, as it existed in the 70s, was not super inclusive. So, what I'm going to say on the next few slides is kind of like very reinforcing of the gender binary almost. So this ecofeminist analysis argues that there exists in our culture these like oppositional dualisms, these social binaries. And what I mean by that is that these two separate things are poised as opposites, completely antithetical to each other, and that our culture also places more value on one than the other. So we can see here how it places women as distinct entirely from men, and it also places humans distinct entirely from nature. So, um, ecofeminism was coined by Francois Dubois. My apologies for my terrible French. I do not speak French at all. In 1974, to explore this link between patriarchal oppression and the exploitation of natural resources. It asserts that um, the association of women and femmes in the natural world has led to the oppression of both. And what I mean by this is that women and femmes were and are depicted as chaotic and irrational, and men are depicted as ordered and more rational. So this provides the justification for male domination over both women and nature. So let's talk about the shortfalls of the ecofeminist movement. It really didn't gain a lot of traction or last as this movement that was super meaningful. And I think that we can attribute that to two things. The first being that it really functions at this theoretical level. We like this is really cool. I love a dualism moment, but also what do we do with this analysis? There was very little um, focused on actionable items that we could be doing to combat climate change and ecological destruction. It really was just this academic, high thinking framework. Um, and the second and more important to me is that it lacks an analysis for race, class, ability, and these other identities that make women's experiences unique. And because it groups all women into one category, it ignores all of the plight of these doubly and triply marginalized women and femmes. And that feels very white feminism to me. So I would love to hear from you all after we wrap up the ecofeminist section about what are some alternatives possibly. So, ecofeminism arose from the 70s when climate change was really emerging as this political issue, getting a lot of attention on the ground and in politics. So, ecofeminism provided us with this framework that compares patriarchal oppression with the human destruction of the natural world. Um, and it also asserts that women's liberation is entwined with environmental liberation from human destruction, which is absolutely and totally correct, but it's not intersectional enough in its analysis or application. So I'd love to hear from you all. If you're feel free to come off mute or to just drop anything in the chat about what are some alternatives to ecofeminism if we're not feeling that this framework is intersectional enough. How can we instead think about um, anything at all? How can we think about any specific issue with ecological destruction? How can we think about climate change? Yeah, I'd just love to hear your thoughts. And that's okay if we don't have any either. Okay, gotcha. I will move on to eco-socialism, which oh, thank you, Dr. Harbolt. So it allowed for an acknowledgement of animals, and it does essentialize the female experience. Yes, completely agreed. Yes, global ecofeminism is more inclusive. Agreed. No, when I was doing a lot of reading on ecofeminism a while back, I read from this uh, Black feminist author who described her experiences in an ecofeminist circle as very, in an American ecofeminist circle as very non-inclusive, very white, very only concerned with the plight of white women. So yes, completely agreed that global ecofeminism is more inclusive and that there are many global ecofeminists around the globe that have done a lot of work on the ground and to change um, public thought and discourse. And that's really cool. If anyone else has thoughts, feel free to share and we can go back. But otherwise, I'm going to pull ahead to eco-socialism, which I'm going to spend a lot more time on because it's kind of my favorite. So, we're going to talk about eco-socialism and applying this anti-capitalist, and even some Marxist thought to the environmental movement. I'm going to go a little more in depth because I'm going to also talk about a specific Marxist theory and its current implications. And that's because I've been spending a lot of time on environmental Marxism for my modern political thought class right now. So it's been super in the front of my brain right there. So first, I think it's essential to define these key terms. Um, Capitalism is an economic system in which there is private ownerships of the means of production, meaning that if I am at a factory, there is an owner to this factory. The laborers are paid a wage. They do not own the factory or any part of the business in any ways. This is not a democracy type situation. Um, this is very hierarchical in which there are laborers and there is an owning class, and the proletariat must sell themselves for labor, and the wealth that they produce is extracted by the owning class. And alternatively, socialism is this collective democratic ownership of the means of production. And the immediate goal of socialists is to redistribute power from capitalists to the working people. So I want to talk about Karl Marx just a little bit. I won't get too like into Marxist theory or anything crazy. But Karl Marx was an incredibly influential historian, philosopher, and revolutionary. And he was really the figure that popularized socialist and communist thought with Frederick Engels through the Communist Manifesto, um, which really calls upon the working class around the globe to unite against the owning class. Um, and Marxism is still very relevant today. It focuses on the economic and material conditions of people, and it explores the struggle between working and owning classes. Marxism is the ideology, socialism is the movement, and I like to use also socialism and communism interchangeably, just as Marx did. Because socialism is the transitory stage and communism is the end destination, but none of that is relevant to where we're going today. Moving on. So, environmental applications of socialist thought holds that global capitalism and the pursuit of profits at all costs really encourages labor abuses and ecological destruction, and that it's also our current system of industrial capitalism that created the climate crisis. So we cannot capitalism our way out of it. Eco-socialists believe that the only viable, lasting solution to climate change lie in socialist politics. So, on the base level, it's very easy to draw the connection between capitalism and the environment because, like, I think one of the easiest way to look at it is talking about overconsumption. Um, Capitalists thrive on overconsumption, and overconsumption is so deeply ingrained into our lives right now. One of the things that I have talked about before is and really gotten into is hall culture, which are you all familiar with hall culture? As in like clothing hauls or makeup hauls or whatever else it is. And if not, it's basically like this situation where these influencers and these wealthy individuals produce these videos of yes, Abby, agreed, um, of their hauls, meaning their loads and loads of stuff that they have purchased. And this is really popular on social media platforms like TikTok, like YouTube especially, but it's really moved to TikTok. Also, Dr. Hoggle, I am unfamiliar with that kid with the egg. What is the egg?
His parents would buy him all these toys and put him in an egg, and every episode he would get all these new toys, and it was disgusting. I can't remember the kid's name. He just always got these eggs, and it
Oh
was
my
all
gosh.
plastic all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I bet. No, it's exactly like that though. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This overconsumption, this way too much stuff, this content of consuming that we're exposed to in our everyday lives on social media platforms. It's made it so deeply ingrained into us that we have to buy more and more all the time. And we're left with really this like insatiable desire to amass resources and buy new things. Um, Yes, I totally agree, Abby. Oftentimes, the influencers don't buy the items, and the companies send them out for free to the influencers as a way of advertising. So often, these perceptions of the clothing, of the makeup, of whatever it is heavily skewed because um, oftentimes they're ads, and you're being advertised to, and you don't even know it. Um, and so this whole culture, it supports abusive labor practices because a lot of the things that thrive on hall culture are these fast fashion type brands that operate in f- that operate under a why am I blanking on the word right now? Sweatshop. They operate on sweatshop models, in which employees are overworked, incredibly, like, disgustingly overpaid, literally killing themselves to make these cheap garments for people like us to consume. And so, and those people, those laborers, they aren't reaping the benefits of hall culture. It's the capitalists that are reaping the benefits. So, what what are you all? I Oh, Ryan's Toys. Yes, I actually have heard of that. Yes, I am familiar with that. Thank you, Dr. Harble. Yes, promoting the toys, all the new toys is absolutely an instance of hall culture and how there's a new huge toy for, let's say, Christmas every year. This is the big Christmas toy of 2023, of 2024. This is what the kids want this year. We don't need all that. We don't need all that stuff. And I'd love to know what are some other examples of people or 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 brands or corporations that have thrived on haul culture. My number one go-to like thought is Shein, the fast fashion brand that produces this really cheap clothing. Um, and I think I read somewhere that they produce 10,000 new designs every day. And obviously you can't do that originally. They copy their designs from artists who have worked really hard to make those designs. Um, and yeah, so people make these videos with Shein hauls, um, saying like, "This is my $500 Shein haul. Let's show you everything I got. Let's do a try on haul." And I think that this haul culture really serves to further um, ingrain into our psyche that we need to buy more stuff. Yes. Abby says, I know that there's been a movement showing how Shein uses illegal workplace practices of Uyghurs, Turkish Muslims that work in China. Yes. Oh my goodness. I didn't even know that. That is, to be honest, though, it really does not surprise me. Um, these brands like Shein, another one that I can think of is Temu, um, really thrive on abusive and almost slave labor practices. iPhones, absolutely. So many of the raw materials for our iPhones, and I have one right here, uh, is harvested from the land by child slaves in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. That is a perfect example. And that's also a perfect example of the Marxist theory I'm about to get into. What is another? Oh, another one. Stanley cups. Stanley cups. You don't need a $40 cup. That's cray. That's so expensive. And like, here's my $3 mug that I've had forever and that I didn't even buy. I stole it from my dad and it does just fine. It's fine. Yes, yes, there has been lead found in Stanley's, and that's crazy. Um, Oh my gosh, yes. And I'm pretty sure it's in like the bottom of the Stanleys or something like that. But yeah, at $40 or aren't they even like 50 and $60 sometimes? They make those fancy ones, those limited edition ones to make you think that you have to get it now before it's gone. I don't even know. But all of these brands thrive on overconsumption, and all of these business owners, these capitalists, thrive on overconsumption, and all the while, the poor laborers of the world are getting poorer. Um, and so I think that is really an easy way to draw the connection between capitalism and the climate crisis, because overconsumption also has insanely detrimental effects on the climate. Um, Whenever we throw away our clothes, oftentimes they're shipped to overseas to other countries. And it's ended up in some places that there's literally beaches full of old clothes because we have so much trash that we don't know what to do with it. Um, and so when we buy all this stuff and we decide that we're done with it and we need to move on to the next thing, it doesn't just disappear. Um, and so it's very clear to see that overconsumption is bad for both laborers and the environment. Oh my gosh, okay. Abby says if they get cracked in a certain way, it can expose the lead. That's crazy. Me personally, I don't like to drink lead. I prefer lead-free water. So I'm chilling without my Stanley. So I'm going to get into this idea, this Marxist theory, called commodity fetishism, and I won't get too like crazy into it. I'm just going to do like a basic overview, um, and how it applies to the climate movement, and especially how it applies to how it's a perfect like framework to understand greenwashing. So Marx defines commodities as an external object, a thing through which its quality satisfies human wants of whatever kind. It's anything with a use value that can be bought and sold. And fetishism is this, we're not talking about the sex thing. Let me be clear there. This fetishism is the idea that there's this attribution of non-material mystical powers to inanimate objects. And it's important to recognize here that this is like very much a colonizer's term. What happened was the Portuguese went into West Africa and saw some of the worship practices, and we're like, OMG, look at these weird, strange people and how they worship objects. And we know now, like, religious worship, it was really like symbolic. Um, so fetishism isn't really a concept we see like thrown around a lot today. Um, but Marx gets a wind of this term, he gets wind of this term, and he uses it to refine this idea called commodity fetishism. So, commodity fetishism holds that as soon as objects emerge as commodities, the social character of private labor and money becomes the direct incarnation of all human labor. And so we forget entirely all of the human relations that go into each of our commodities, and we see the object as having some sort of value in itself. So in Capital, in Marx's like Bible, um, he uses this metaphor of the table. So he says that when a piece of wood is turned into a table through human labor, like we see that, you know, this carpenter or whoever makes tables, this table maker, um, is clearly handcrafting this table, and you know, the use value is clear. We see the human labor behind it. Um, but as soon as the table emerges as a commodity, something to be bought and sold, something to be exchanged for money, the connection to the actual hands of the laborer is severed. So if we go to the store and we see a table today, we don't really think about like who made this table and where, and what their relationship with their boss is like. We see this table as costing $100 because it has some sort of inherent value. It costs $100 because it does. Um, So people in a capitalist society treat commodities as as a value is imbued in the commodities themselves, rather than the amount of real labor expended to produce the object. Is that making sense to people? If you could just give me like a reaction or like anything that, or like if you have a question where I could clarify before we move on, that would be also totally cool. Yay! Okay. So I want to talk about greenwashing and commodity fetishism because greenwashing is really commodity fetishism in action. So we're all familiar with greenwashing, at least I would assume so, because it's really a popular term now. It wasn't that way a little bit ago, even. But greenwashing refers to these false or misleading statements about the environmental benefits of a particular commodity to profit off well-intentioned consumers. So, we see, I don't know, prime example of greenwashing for me is like when I go to the store and I look at a toothbrush even, and there's a wooden toothbrush in like layers and layers of plastic packaging. And they're like, look at this bamboo, compostable, biodegradable, eco-friendly toothbrush. And then they're like packaging it in all sorts of plastic and also probably like, yeah, you know what I'm saying? This is like the vibe of greenwashing. Um, so greenwashing is commodity fetishism in action because companies can profit off of this green advertising while the social relations behind the commodities are obscured entirely. So we don't know, let's say, um, I'm looking around my desk here. Let's just go with my mug again. So this mug, I'm pretty sure it was like originally from Walmart or something. I don't know what that brand is. But um if I were to go to the store and I were to look at this mug, I would be like, "Okay, great. That mug is $5. I'm going to buy it." We don't really think about or have any reason to think about the labor relations or the environmental impact of each of our commodities. And quite honestly, if we tried to do that, we would go insane. Um, And so long as we exist under this system of global capitalism, we will never know the full story behind each commodity. Um, it's literally the nature of capitalism to obscure um, the labor behind each item we own. So the other day I was chilling, watching Parks and Rec on Peacock. Do we have any Parks and Recs fans here? I just started watching it and I don't know how I've never seen it before. It's so great. And it's also a great way to take a break from finals. Yes, yes. Uh, okay. So I was watching it on Peacock and I, of course, have ads on Peacock because nobody's going to pay to not have ads. That's silly. And so I saw this commercial, this Exxon Mobil commercial. Um, that says, "Let's deliver." Um, it's really like the world needs ways to reduce carbon emissions, and we as ExxonMobil are gonna give it to you. And I literally like laughed out loud in my living room. That was like so funny to me. Like, are you kidding me, ExxonMobil? You're gonna tell me that you're sustainable? That's so hilarious because ExxonMobil has known about climate change since the 70s. And they did nothing about it. Uh, Actually, that's a lie. Hold on. That's a lie. They did something about it, and what they did was so deeply ingrain climate denial into the American psyche so that they wouldn't have to change uh, at all. um, so this is from their website also that let's keep economies humming with fewer emissions. Um, it's so silly to me. That's bullshit. It's bullshit. And there's no other way of putting it. So it reminded me of this Super Bowl commercial that came out in 2010. Um, and it's like their Green Police ad. So they have this whole bit where there's the Green Police, and so it opens with this guy at the grocery store, and the cashier asks, "Do you want do you want a paper or a plastic bag? And he says plastic. And so then comes the green police. The green police are here, and they're gonna go after everyone who's making not green decisions. Um, so they had this whole bit to show just how sustainable their green diesel cars were. Um, and I'm sure this ad cost ridiculous amounts of money, and like and tons of people saw it because it was on the Super Bowl. But a few years later, the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, discovered that Volkswagen had intentionally cheated their emissions tests, and that their clean diesel cars emitted 40 times the legal limit of nitrous oxide. This is one of the hugest greenwashing scandals to date. Um, so we see here that the sale of approximately almost 600,000 green diesel motor vehicles were cheated with the emissions tests. So these are very obvious examples of greenwashing, of making a company or a product appear sustainable when it is very much not. Um, and I'd love to know if you all can come up with any other examples of greenwashing. Anything at all. If you go into the grocery store, or if you've gone into the grocery store before and just seen something and been immediately like, yeah, that's greenwashing. And also feel free to come off mute. That's okay if not. I'm gonna tell you some greenwashing like red flags for me. So one of the hugest red flags for greenwashing for me is the word eco-friendly. Um, what does that mean, first of all? It's like if something says that it's eco-friendly, there's like an immediate like little question mark going on in my brain. Um, that word in particular has been used in such a way that it's really lost any sort of meaning that it could have carried. Um, another thing is another thing is um like Coca-Cola and businesses like that putting on their packaging and their labeling like things like please recycle. Um, even though only roughly 9% of all trash produced gets recycled. Um, Ecotourism is complicated. Celebrity veganism, all about privilege. Yes, Dr. Harville, I absolutely agree. Um, yeah, ecotourism is a complicated space to exist. It certainly has its benefits where people can experience, the natural world, but also like at the end of the day, it's still tourism. Um, I'd love to know what you think about celebrity veganism. I don't know if I'm familiar.
The book I used to use in 201, which was Gendered Visions, I can't remember the name of it. It had an article about Beyonce's veganism and the reasons that she did it and what it meant. And basically, it was just kind of a celebrity fad and not a true commitment to either the environment or the animals or anything like that. So it's basically just been commodified as a lifestyle. So
yeah. No, I think I could probably name quite a few vegan celebrities. I think Billie Eilish is vegan. Isn't Ariana Grande vegan?
right.
I don't know.
And I mean, it's a privilege to become a vegan because
Yeah.
it's difficult to find fresh food all the time, especially if you live in a food desert. It's a cultural thing. So do you turn down the ham at Christmas dinner? Things like that. So It can be very well commodified by celebrities.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I think that's a perfect example. Also, your cat is so cute.
Hi,
Hello.
hello everybody.
Oh my gosh.
Let's hear more from our other participants. I want to hear your thoughts.
Oh, another one that comes to mind is do y'all remember when Tide did that thing where they're like, we're gonna make our things in more sustainable packaging that's like better and whatever. Or was it Tide? I don't remember. It was some laundry detergent company, but also like the allegedly like biodegradable packaging or whatever had a plastic lining, meaning that it would never really entirely biodegrade. Um, Stuff like that where they can these companies can point to like, look how good this product is for the environment, you should buy this one instead, and it may even cost a little more money, but it's okay because you're going to feel better about yourself for supporting the environment, when in reality it might not do all that much, if anything at all, um, and they're just profiting off of you as a well-intentioned consumer. So I think that greenwashing is the prime example of the commodity fetish. And if we attempted, like I said earlier, if we really attempted to understand the human relations and the environmental degradation that goes on behind each of our commodities, like we would go mad. Like here on my desk, I have way too many things to think about to even like do the things on my desk right here. But that's really the point. It's simply impossible to know the background of each person we make. And this impossibility sustains commodity fetishism, which conceals the labor abuses and environmental destruction that thrives under global capitalism and makes the values of our commodities appear inherent. Um, so I think that's one of the most interesting to me applications of Marxist theory to the environment. But eco-socialists also believe quite a few things that don't have to do with the commodity fetish, and that really socialist politics can be much more broad. And I think that is really cool. So we're going to wrap up here and then we'll discuss for quite some time. So eco-socialism is this ideology that merges socialist politics with environmental justice. And by bringing this like sense of class consciousness to our understanding of climate change, we can get a fuller picture of its causes and its solutions. So, um, I think it's important to note that some of the things that eco-socialists believe in generally are some type of public job guarantee that provides a sense of employment and income security for workers everywhere, um, strong labor rights, unionization, and demand for shorter work weeks, um, overturning of income equality, and support for interventions in terms of funding research development and rolling out the technologies that are really going to save us from environmental disasters. And also the decommodification of social needs and public services, to shift the power and control from private to public ownership, so that environmental goals and can predominate over this 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 need for profits. So that is eco-socialism. I would love to know your thoughts. What do you think about eco-socialism? Do you think it aligns with your politic in any way? Um, what are what's the vibe? That's okay. We can come back to that in a second. So I wanted to have a quick word before we chat some more about intersectionality and climate change. As we all know now, intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw to convey the idea that systems of oppression can intersect on those with multiple marginalized identities. Um, and so I think it's really important to note that ecofeminism and ecosocialism ecosocialism provide us with interesting frameworks to understand the climate, but intersectionality is absolutely a non-negotiable. We must remember that the way that climate change impacts us and now and will impact us in the future heavily depends on factors such as gender, race, class, ability, and all of these other identities. Um, so I think that uh, ecofeminism especially really falls short on the intersectionality side of things. And I just wanted to note that it's something that is obviously super important in our current discussion. So I have some discussion questions for us to process what we just talked about. Um, did you learn anything new or surprising about ecofeminism or ecosocialism? And feel free to just pop off mute and say what you're thinking. Or was there anything that resonated with you in this conversation, or anything you'd like to expand upon and go in a little more depth with? Thank you, Dr. Harble. Thank you so much. Me too. I've had a lot of fun with it. I have some more questions if you'd like to talk about those instead. Um, do your values align with the ecofeminist or ecosocialist movements in any way?
Yes.
Agreed. Certainly agreed.
I do take with a grain of salt some of the early ecofeminism. However, it also had a spiritual aspect that I
Mm-hmm.
find very important. I feel spiritually connected to gardening and animals and all of that stuff. So I appreciated that it was not all cerebral or intellectual.
Yes, agreed. Completely agreed. No, I think the spiritual aspect of ecofeminism is certainly really interesting, but I also am familiar with the ways in which it's been criticized for that, and I also think that
Yes.
that is a little misogynistic,
It
just a
is.
little bit.
Actually, Josephine Donovan challenged the early animal rights authors, Tom Regan and Peter Singer, because they relied so much on the rationalist tradition. And she challenged that, and she said, "Why is it necessary to only be an intellectual when we have feelings and emotions? We can do both." So I
Absolutely.
use that both and feminist model for my entire life.
Absolutely. Completely agreed. Um, any more thoughts about how we can use the principles of these frameworks to guide us to a more just future? Or how specifically we could challenge potentially patriarchy and or climate change or capitalism within the climate justice movement?
I definitely love challenging the patriarchy within the climate justice movement because a lot of times,
I think you cut out for us, Abby.
oh no, you're good, sorry. Uh, I was saying a lot of times, women and femmes are the most impacted when it comes to climate justice issues. So like, just thinking within the context of like our country, the United States, like talking about like natural disasters and how that affects women and femmes, and like if I don't want to go too deep into it, but like how it affects them and impacts them more often, like how they
Hmm.
like Hurricane Katrina, there was a huge influx of human trafficking specifically for women and femmes because of that and how that like bunch of like systematic things that goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why it's really important to bring this sort of intersectional, multi-focused framework to the climate justice movement for reasons exactly like that, because climate change, natural disasters, and ecological destruction does not treat everyone the same. It's not neutral. It will have, it has already and will continue to have distinct implications upon different communities. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. If there's no more thoughts, if y'all would like to share your experience with us, that would be so cute and awesome and so very appreciated. Um, you can scan that little QR code and do a little eval form. Um, that would be so fun and great. But other than that, thank you so much. Don't be a stranger. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can find me on campus, in the Garden Commons probably, or in the Honor Center, or you could also hit my email. It's right here. I love chatting. I love meeting with people. Um, Feel free to reach out at any time. I'll go back to this just in case you need it, but I think that's all we've got today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. Thank you, Savannah. Yay.
Thank you.
I should have had you as a guest speaker in my class.
Oh, that would have been so awesome, but it's okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.